A dead British officer washes ashore in Spain, 1943. Strapped to his chest was a life jacket and chained to his wrist was a briefcase. Inside that briefcase were secret military documents. Documents that could change the course of war if they fell into the hands of Nazi intelligence. But what no one knew at the time was that this man, his identity, and everything he carried was completely fake. By 1943, the Allies had finally begun pushing back. Victory in North Africa had opened the door to Europe. But there was a problem. To continue the war, they needed to invade the continent, and the obvious target was Sicily. The Germans knew it. They were already preparing for it. Reinforcing defenses, positioning troops, and waiting. A direct attack would be exactly what Hitler expected, and it would come at a devastating cost. Thousands of soldiers, walking straight into a trap. The Allies didn't just need a plan to invade Europe, they needed a way to mislead an entire army. And this is where the play starts. The body was pulled from the water and brought ashore in southern Spain. At first glance, he appeared to be a British officer, another casualty of war lost at sea. But it was the briefcase that caught everyone's attention. Inside were official-looking documents. Stamped, signed and classified. Letters between high-ranking Allied officers, discussing what appeared to be future invasion plans. To the Spanish authorities, this was valuable intelligence. And Spain, though neutral, had close ties with Nazi Germany. It didn't take long for copies of those documents to quietly make their way into German hands. Everything about it looked real. Everything made sense. But this wasn't an accident. The body, the briefcase, the documents had all been placed there, on purpose. A top-secret British deception plan designed to mislead Nazi Germany about the Allies' next move. Behind it were two intelligence officers, Ewan Montague and Charles Chumley. Working inside British intelligence, their task was to convince the enemy to believe a lie, so convincing that it could change the course of the war. If plan worked, German forces would move away from Sicily and thousands of Allied soldiers would be spared. If it failed, the invasion would walk straight into heavily defended territory. By 1943, the war was no longer fought only with guns and tanks. It became an information game war. Behind the front lines, a hidden network of spies, codebreakers, and double agents worked in silence. At the center of it all was Bletchley Park, a secret facility where encrypted German messages were being decoded. Using the German Enigma machine, the Nazis believed their communications were unbreakable. But they were wrong. This very idea didn't begin as a fully formed plan. It started as a suggestion. Among the many ideas listed, at first, it sounded ridiculous. But the more they thought about it, the more it made sense. A dead man couldn't be interrogated. He couldn't contradict the story. And if everything on him looked real, the enemy would have no reason to doubt it. The idea was eventually presented to MI5. An operation that would soon be called Mincemeat. Despite the risks, the plan was approved. Now, all they needed was a body. Finding a body was not as simple as it sounded. It had to meet very specific conditions. The cause of death had to appear consistent with drowning. The body had to be recent and show no obvious signs that would raise suspicion. And perhaps most importantly, it had to belong to someone no one would come looking for. Eventually, they found him. A man named Glinder Michael. He had died in London, alone, with no known family. To the world, he was just another forgotten life. But in death, he would be given a new identity, a new purpose. The decision wasn't easy. Using a human body as part of a military operation raised serious ethical questions. But the war had already forced difficult choices. And this one, they believed, could save thousands of lives. The man they had found would no longer be known as himself. He was given a new name. Major William Martin. An officer of the British Royal Marines. But a name alone wasn't enough. To make the deception believable, they had to create an entire life, one that could withstand scrutiny from German intelligence. They issued him an official identity card, dressed him in uniform, assigned him a rank, a role, a purpose. Inside his pockets, they placed personal belongings, items a real man would carry. A wallet with receipts, a used theater ticket, keys, even a photograph of a woman they claimed was his fiancée. They even added small frustrations, like a letter about an overdue bank payment. But the most important part of the operation wasn't the man. It was what he carried. Inside the briefcase were carefully prepared documents, letters that described future military plans, but not the real ones. The documents suggested that the Allies were planning to invade Greece and Sardinia, not Sicily. To make the deception convincing, the letters were written in a natural tone, not overly formal, not overly secretive. If the Germans believed these papers, they would move their forces away from Sicily, and straight into the trap. Now the plan needed a perfect place for implementation. For this, they chose Spain, as it was officially neutral in the war, but quietly connected to German intelligence networks. The goal was simple: let the Spanish discover the body, and trust that the information would find its way into German hands. And it likely would, through agents like Adolf Hitler, a known German operative working inside Spain. With the plan complete, there was only one thing left to do: set it in motion. Under strict secrecy, the body was transported across Britain, sealed inside a specially prepared container. It was then loaded onto a submarine, HMS Seraph. Its mission was simple, but precise. Travel undetected, to the coast of Spain. In the early hours of the morning, off the shoreline near Huelva, they released the body of Major William Martin into the sea. From that moment on, the mission was no longer under their control. Hours passed, then days. Eventually, the body was found. Just as planned. The briefcase was noticed. The document copies began to move through the shadows of intelligence networks. Back in Britain, they watched, and waited. But they needed the Germans to believe these documents were real, so they played their part. Sending urgent messages, demanding the return of the briefcase, acting as if something valuable had been lost. But the plan was far from foolproof. At any moment, it could fall apart. And if that happened, the invasion of Sicily would be walking straight into a fully prepared defense. The documents didn't stop in Spain. As expected, they made their way into the hands of German intelligence. Carefully examined, analyzed, cross-checked. To them, everything looked real. Soon, the information was passed up the chain of command, all the way to Adolf Hitler, and Hitler believed it. He became convinced that the Allies were planning to strike not at Sicily, but at Greece and Sardinia. German divisions were repositioned. Defenses were reinforced in the wrong places. Troops, tanks, resources, moved away from the real target. The deception had worked. In July 1943, the Allies launched their invasion. The operation was called Operation Husky. The target remained same: Sicily. But this time, key defenses had been weakened, forces had been redirected. The island was still dangerous, but not the fortress it could have been. Allied troops landed, and pushed forward. Fighting was fierce, but the resistance was not what it could have been. The cost was far lower than expected, and the invasion succeeded. But the impact didn't end in Sicily. The deception had forced Germany to spread its forces thinner, across multiple fronts. On the Eastern Front, where German troops were already struggling. This shift in resources added even more pressure, eventually reshaping the battlefield of an entire war. The operation remained a secret, long after the war had ended. The truth wouldn't come out until decades later. When classified files were finally opened, and the story behind the deception was revealed to the world. Today, his grave no longer carries just one name. It honors both the man he was, and the role he played. No medals, no speeches. Just a story of how one life almost lost to history, helped save thousands more. And how a man who never existed, helped win a war.